Today we're going to be talking about phase C of NWA1, and like phase B and the opposite of phase B, all the moves in phase B are done on the left side of the body. All the moves in phase C opposite are done on the right side, right side of the body. So it makes it easier to do. It makes it easier to teach. So phase C, like phase A, it travels along the same line. And then the opposite of phase C travels across the top of the star. So we can do phase D opposite and get back to the middle of the star. So Blue Belt NWA 2 has 42 moves, key-ups around 13, 23, 33. We're going to talk about some basics real quick before I start demonstrating. The 5 parts of a kick. Actually, most people talk about 4 parts of a kick: the chamber, execution, rechamber, return. I like to add pivot to that because people don't concentrate on the pivot. I think the pivot is probably the weakest part of most people's kicks. And then the 5 parts of a hand technique that we very rarely talk about are chamber, hand direction, hand rotation, end point, and rechamber. So when we talk about these individual moves, I'm going to show you the form, front and side, then we'll break it down, and I will show you those individual parts of the kicks. So in this form, there are 2 stances. There's the closed stance and the back stance. So just let's take a second to talk about that. Closed stance, feet are together, obviously parallel, knees are bent just a little bit, weight is evenly distributed front and back and left and right. So that's the closed stance, pretty easy. And the back stance we've been talking about for a long, long time, since Orange Belt. And that is feet are 90 degrees apart. The back leg, the foot is going towards the front, and the front leg is going this way. Again, 90 degrees apart. We want most of the weight on the back, 60 to 70% on the back, the rest on the front. Bend the knees slightly. Again, weight is back, and we want to bend those legs. One of the things that I see a lot of people doing is they tend to do their back stance like a middle stance, where the weight is directly over the center. Their center of gravity is in between their feet, and that is not correct. So I spend a lot of time concentrating and working on my back stance so that I can get most of the weight back here. Okay, I shouldn't automatically be able to lift up my front foot, but with just a little adjustment of the weight, I should be able to pick up that front foot in a back stance. So the moves of this form: phase C, left low block, left number 1 side kick, left number 3 side kick, and a left double outer knife hand. Obviously, the opposite of that is a right low block, right number 1 side kick, right number 3 hook kick, and a right double outer forearm block, knife hand outer forearm block. So let me show you the form. We'll show the moves both sideways and frontways, and then we'll pick it apart and talk about some of the things that you really got to pay attention to. So phase C, knife hand low block, side kick, landing in a middle stance, number 3 hook kick, knife hand double outer forearm block. Right hand side, knife hand low block, side kick, land in the middle stance, hook kick, double knife hand block. Going to the front, left side, knife hand low block, side kick, hook kick, knife hand, double knife hand block. Right side, knife hand low block, side kick, number 3 hook kick, double knife hand forearm block, double knife hand block. So some of the things we need to talk about as far as that form goes. Let's talk about the hand techniques. Chamber. Chamber for the knife hand block is just like the chamber for a low block, with the exception our hand is open. As we're bringing this hand back, this hand comes down. We want to go past the body because we're blocking this side. If we stop here, it's not very effective. We need to stop here. So chamber, direction, hand rotation rotates in the last approximately 3 inches. And this is where the ending position is. And of course, the rechamber, backhand rechamber is here. The double knife hand block, chambers just like a double outer forearm block, but our hands are open. Direction of travel, let me stand toward the front so you can see this better. Direction of travel is forward, hand rotation, again at the last 3 inches or so, and we are stopping outside of our face. We don't want to stop here. That would not be very effective. We are stopping here. The other hand, the chamber hand, is just protecting our sternum. So I've heard a lot of people say that this hand should be level. I think in the way books, Grandmaster Lee says it should be at an angle just a little bit. So here. So let's talk about the kicks. If you recall, a number 1 kick is a kick with your front leg without moving either of the other legs. A number 3 kick, we're going to move our back leg and kick with our front leg. So this side kick is difficult because we are starting from a closed stance, from that low block. I have to pivot. I have to do all 5 parts of the kick, including the pivot, and that is a little bit hard for some people from here because I can do it one of 2 ways. I can either pivot on my chamber before I can kick, or I can pivot on the kick. I like to pivot on the chamber because it makes it, I think, a lot more natural because I'm turning those hips anyway. I might as well move my foot. As you see, my foot is not chambering to the full 180 degrees. I'm sorry, my foot is not pivoting to the full 180 degrees, but when I do my kick, I finish that pivot. So that's, I think, what makes this side kick difficult for a lot of people. Now in the form, we land that side kick in a middle stance so we can do our number 3 hook kick. Remembering that a number 3, we're kicking, this is the front leg, we're stepping up this way to kick with the front leg. So after we do that side kick, we land in a middle stance so that we can step up and do that hook kick. Now, you can pivot this in a couple ways also. When I learned a number 3 side kick or hook kick, I learned, get back so you can see my feet, I learned that we bring this foot to an L and then we kick from here. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think a better way that Chief Nakani told me when we were working on my form is he said, if we, as we're bringing the base foot forward, we also slightly chamber or slightly turn the kicking foot. Now I've got my hip in the direction that I want it to be for the kick. It's not so awkward to have to turn my hips when I'm chambering that way. I can just bring my leg here and my hips are already where it needs to be to do that kick. At camp, we talked about doing a side kick from here. Standing backwards, looking over our shoulder, and executing that kick. That is kind of what Chief Nakane is talking about. As we step up, we're turning our hips to that target already. So we're pre-positioning our hips for that kick, and I think it makes it a lot easier. So let's just talk a little about one of the knowledge attributes. That very first one is base. A lot of people get that confused. What that basically means is you have a base for every kicking technique and a base for every hand technique. Your base for your kicking technique would be whatever leg you are not kicking with, or your base leg. That kind of makes sense, right? So if I'm doing a number 2 front kick, my front leg is my base foot. My base for my hand techniques is my starting position. So for the knife hand, double knife hand block, my base is here. Direction, hand rotation, ending position, and rechamber. So we've talked a little bit today about blue belt in Watu, phase C and the opposite of phase C, and talked a little bit about the 5 parts of a kick, the 5 parts of any hand technique, and we talked about base as an attribute.